Okay, so now that we've made this data sheet, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start manipulating the data a little bit. Now, the first thing I need to do is I actually think I'm going to hide the student name as well because just to give us a little bit more room to work. So I'm going to go hide the column. What you notice when you hide it, you get this little arrow which allows you to bring the column back if you want it. You guys are going to want to bring the column back because you guys are going to be you're going to want to know what your data is. Okay, well, let's just drag this over. Okay, and the first thing we need to do is we have a little problem here. Is that you notice the diameter is in millimeters? Well, there's two things we need. Number one, diameter is actually in millimeters, but most of the charts that you'll find will actually have density based on centimeters. So we need to convert this from millimeters into centimeters. All right, same thing with this thickness. We're going to convert it into millimeters and centimeters. Now, that's actually fairly simple. A millimeter is a thousandth of a meter. A centimeter is a hundredth of a meter. So basically, if you take millimeters and divide it by 10, that will give you the number of centimeters it has. Okay? So for instance, if you have 10 millimeters, well, you divide that by 10, that's 1 centimeter. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So we're actually going to convert this. Why don't we start off with the thickness? We're going to go thickness in centimeters. Oh, now, how are you going to do that? Well, we're going to do it by putting in a formula. Now, you notice this toolbar up here. When I type down here into this box, up in the where this fx is where the formula is going to pipe in. So I'm going to type in equals, and then I'm going to click on this first column, E2, which is the thickness in millimeters, and I'm going to divide that by 10. Boom. And you notice that I divided by 10, 2.4 became 0.24. 2.4 millimeters is actually a tenth, 2/10 of a centimeter. Now, the beauty of Excel or the beauty of spreadsheets is I can just take this. If I mouse over it, my cursor turns from an arrow into a cross, and I can just, in the lower right-hand corner, I can take that and do what's called a relative drag fill, and it will bring that formula all the way down. Okay, way down here. All right, so if you notice, it's like, okay, the first one, if you actually take a look up here, it says up here in the formula bar, E2 divided by 10. If I do the downward arrow, it becomes E3 divided. That's called a relative drag fill. It works really well until you get to something where there's a little bit of an error. You notice that this kid here, it can't do the division because this kid here put in units. He put in millimeters units. So we have to divide that. So I'm going to get rid of all those units. And what if you notice, as soon as I get rid of the units, all of a sudden it starts working. I'm also going to get rid of grams. We already know this is in grams. By the way, kids are not incorrect by putting in labels, but unfortunately Excel can't deal with it. So we now know the weight, we know the thickness in centimeters, and we need the diameter in millimeters. But I'm actually going to skip a step here because we're actually going to do two things at once. Because not only do we need to convert the diameter into centimeters, but we also don't really need the diameter. We're going to need the radius. So think about it. What's the radius? It's 1/2 the diameter. If I have the diameter here, how do I get the radius? You divide by 2. So we're going to go equals, again, we're typing in a formula, the diameter, and I want to divide by 2 first, so I'm going to put this in parenthesis D2 \2, close the parenthesis. So that means I've divided by 2, and then, now that new number, which is going to be like 19, 38 divided by 2 is 19, I'm then going to divide that number by 10 to convert that number into millimeters. And you notice that 38 millimeters becomes 3.8 centimeters. Half of that is 1.9 centimeters. And again, if I drag this down, I mouse over to the lower right-hand corner, and when it becomes across, start dragging it down, you'll notice the formula, D6, the formula goes down over and over again and keeps on repeating. All right, so what have we done? Well, we've cleaned up our data. We now have, we now have the radius in centimeters, and we have the weight in grams. So we basically have all the information we need to first calculate volume, and then we're going to calculate density. So that's it for now. That's the next tutorial. We're going to calculate volume.